Hey guys! It's been a minute, hasn't it? I have some exciting news that I'll share later in this video, and it's related to why I went on a 2-week sabbatical from YouTube, if you can call it that. Today I have a nice little treat for you guys. So, I've experimented with making my own handmade paints. This started off with making my own pigment powder from fruits and vegetables. That was quite the process. Then I moved into making paints using soft pastels, and finally making watercolors using store-bought pigment powder. But what inspired this journey to begin with was a fascination of handmade watercolors as a whole, gained from watching reviews about them here on YouTube. Then the straw that broke the camel's back was Arlie Bean's series on paint making. I know I just mentioned like 8 videos in this one paragraph, so I'll be sure to link everything down below. This video featured the first set of handmade watercolors that caught my attention. I have 2 in total, which isn't a lot, but hey, handmade watercolors are quite pricey and I'm on a budget. So one from Poems About You, and the other, which of course is the focus of this video, by Red Clover Meadow. Both are sold on Etsy, so I'll link them down below if you're interested. And just a side note, I bought Poems About You on my own, and Red Clover was gifted to me, but this was back before December, so this was before I announced that I was gonna do a no-buy year, okay? I am sticking to those rules. Attempting to make my own paints was quite a process, and through this, I've gained such a strong appreciation for professional paint makers. The level of patience it takes is beyond admirable. This is a place that I'm coming from in this review. Handmade paints are just not as consistent as professional grade paints are. They're not going to lay on your page the same way. They feel different to work with. And a lot of artists will see the word different as special. I am one of these people, and acknowledging that these paints are handmade, this is where my first impression / review is coming from. So while I'll make some comparisons to manufactured paints throughout this video, I'm coming from the perspective of knowing that these are handmade paints and knowing what goes into it. We all have our biases. Even if some claim to be impartial, no one truly is. So anyways, I just wanted to lay it all out there before we officially dive in. Red Clover Meadow paints are made by a woman who lives somewhere in Europe. I don't remember what the shipping label said, but somewhere over there. She has just over 1,500 sales on Etsy and only opened her store in 2020. Her shop mostly consists of handmade paints, both sets and individual pans, along with a couple of handmade ceramic palettes and handmade watercolor journals. Her paints are solely made from mineral pigments, so no synthetic pigments, which means they're more naturally toned. She uses a combination of gum arabic, organic honey, distilled water, glycerin, and clove essential oils within her binder. And this is quite a typical mixture for handmade paints in general, but everyone uses their own proportions. Most of her paints are semi-opaque, or at least this is what it says on her Etsy description, and they do take a minute to activate. So before using them, you really have to spray them with water and let them sit for a little bit. And because I'm impatient, you'll see that I didn't exactly do this. Not for all of the pans, at least. The set I'm using is one that consists of 8 pans, and it cost me 70 Canadian dollars plus $15 for shipping. So $85 in total, or 67 USD. I've seen these paints go on sale, like 10% off during some special occasions. I think there's a sale going on right now. So if you're interested in buying them, now's the time. The illustration that you see here is actually the second piece that I painted with this Red Clover Meadow set. The first was something similar, just drawn in a different style. And I was trying something new, but I really didn't like the style that I went for the first time. It looked a little bit off, kind of like in a creepy doll sort of way. And I'll show you a comparison at the end so you can make your own judgment. It just wasn't coming together how I'd hoped, so I actually ended up lining it with colored pencil, which is something that I didn't do in the artwork that you're seeing here. So what you're seeing now is all paint plus a little bit of white wash at the end just for highlights. The fact that I gave this a second attempt really gave me an opportunity to get used to the paints. So it made for a much better piece, as well as a much more just review. What I enjoy about these Red Clover Meadow paints is that they granulate in a way that's very unique to handmade paints. Flat washes aren't going to be completely consistent if you compare these to manufactured paints. I use a lot of flat washes in my art, so this is something that threw me off at first. Once I got more used to the paints, I saw just how special this feature was. It creates a really neat texture, and I find it visually interesting. Along with the almost muted color of this palette, it made this piece, which of course is just a basic cute girl drawing, into something that has a little bit more bite to it. I really appreciated this. During my first attempt at this piece, I found myself a bit frustrated at how the paints weren't acting in a way that I was accustomed to. For reference, my go-to watercolors live in my Pretty Excellent set, and I dove into this set comparing them to my go-to, in which case they didn't do what I expected them to. And soon after, I realized that hello, this is a known feature of watercolors. They're unpredictable and in some cases uncontrollable. We just do our best to work with and around these properties. And this is what makes watercolors so special and therapeutic. It's why I fell in love with the medium. And the experience of using these Red Clover Meadow paints really drove this point home. Whenever I'm experiencing art block, I like to turn to a different medium entirely, sometimes a different subject, but playing around with a different medium that you don't have much expertise in almost gives you permission to make mistakes and be free with it. Although watercolors aren't anything new to me, using these watercolors specifically did give me a different experience. And because I haven't really painted much of anything in the past 3 weeks, starting off with these paints opened me back up to art as a whole. In terms of the piece itself, I didn't mix too many colors together. For the most part, I took the paint straight from the pans. For her jeans, I mixed a little bit of the Nicosia green, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but that's the blue color that I used in her hair, with some violet brown to create a slightly more gray color. I also used this combination, except more heavily on the violet brown to create the lines on her shirt. Although slight, I did notice some separation in the pigments that I mixed together after they dried in my palette, but this had no effect on the paint on my paper. This was something that I actually experienced with my own handmade paints, except it was much more severe. And I'm not sure if this is a property of handmade paints as a whole, the specific process that was used to make them, which in my case was lazy mulling, or the use of mineral pigments and how they react with one another. I'm leaning towards the last one for this specific set. Overall, I didn't expect to enjoy using these watercolors as much as I did. And no, I didn't test how well these watercolors lift or whether they rub off with a tissue. I just painted with them. Because for me, sharing my thoughts on an art supply is sharing the experience of an item while using it as you would normally. Plus, I severely lack patience. If you'd like to learn more about the technical side of these paints, then I will link a video created by Hungry for Paints in the description below. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to share them down below. Let me know if these paints are on your radar at all, or if you've had first-hand experience with them. In which case, not sure why you'd be watching a review, but hey, to each their own. In terms of why I've been missing in action for the past 2 weeks, I actually just sent in 2 separate applications to teach English abroad in Korea. I haven't gotten an interview date or anything yet, but I feel pretty good about my application. It was quite an extensive process, so I actually skipped a week's worth of my Italian and urban sketching classes because getting these applications done just consumed me. Not just physically by taking up all my time, but they took out my mental capacity as well. So that's why I took a mini YouTube sabbatical. Along the same vein, living and working abroad has been a dream of mine for a while now, and thinking way ahead, if I do get the job in Korea, the nature of my videos will likely evolve. Rather than being an amateur artist channel with occasional DIY art supply videos, I'm probably going to move towards traveling amateur artist that features a little bit of art and overseas adventures. Seriously though, by sending this application in, I feel like I'm finally taking the necessary steps to move forward in life. And if you've seen some of my identity crisis type videos, it feels really good to actually know what I want for once, and to make strides towards that. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was great to see you after so long. Thanks for sticking around till the end. Until next time, stay creative, stay adventurous. Peace.